cross the Israeli border, no problem whatsoever. Get to the Jordanian side, and I'll let Lynell take over here.
My goodness. I thought it was going to be a simple thing like it was when we crossed over. We got in there, and the first thing that happened is there's this, if you've ever seen like a picture of a hall that goes on and never ends, it's one of those optical illusions that you see. That's what this place looked like. I'm just telling you. I don't know how far it was, but we were walking across the border. So the first place we get to, they're going to x-ray our suitcases. We put our suitcases on there, and the guy looks up at me, looks up at Nehemia, and he says, do you have drones? I was, no. Nehemia's like, no, we don't have drones. I'm like, no. He's like, do you have drones? And I said, no, we don't have any drones. He's like, are there drones in your luggage? And we're like, nope, there's no drones in our luggage. And that was just really weird.
That's something that repeated itself. We went through security numerous times just to get out.
Yeah.
So this is Friday. We're going across. Now when you leave Israel at the airport, they just, I don't know, swipe your passport and you walk out to the terminal. But when you go through a foot crossing and then you're going to go into Jordan, you get a little piece of pink paper. Little pink slip. And what we didn't realize is on her pink slip, it said in little letters USA. On mine, it said ISR. Because when I leave Israel, I'm required to use my Israeli passport. So now when I enter Jordan, I hand them my American passport. I hand them Lynell's American passport. They said, no, where's your Israeli passport? And they said, it says here that you're Israeli. We can only enter Jordan on your Israeli passport. So I give them my Israeli passport, and then we enter into a bit of a complicated situation. Israelis cannot enter Jordan and freely move around. When it turns out, and I'd been to Jordan before, and this was not the case in 2007, last time I was there. It's a long time. But now when an Israeli enters Jordan, you have to have they call it a guide, but what it really is a minder. Right? Remember, like in the old Soviet days, wherever you went, there's somebody who is always with you. You can't go anywhere unless you are being watched by a person who you are paying to follow you and go with you everywhere that you go. Now, what Lynell doesn't know is when I was in Jordan in 2007, the Palestinians complain a lot about checkpoints, how when they go to different areas, everywhere in Jordan, there's checkpoints. I traveled around Jordan for several days with my nephew in 2007. Every 15 minutes, we were stopped at a checkpoint.
Wow.
And they said, let's see your passports. Who are you? Where are you going? Right? That's Jordan. It's a lockdown country. There's no freedom of movement. You can't just go into Jordan and say, oh, I'm going to go to this place and that place. You're limited in where you're allowed to go. And how you're allowed to move to those places. So we're being told, because you're an Israeli citizen, you have to have a guide, a minder, who you have to pay. And since you didn't arrange this in advance, we really can't let you in the country. And I'm like, look, I'm just going to the airport. I'm just going to the hotel. I'm going to stay at this hotel for 3 days, and I'm going to the airport, and then I'm leaving. I'm just trying to get out. And finally, they bring in someone, and he fills out all this paperwork.
But you have to understand, Nehemia's in this little room. Okay, I'm not in the room. I'm out in the hallway. They've given me a piece of paper, and it says, Lynell Gordon, blah, blah, blah. And it says Nehemia Gordon, blah, blah, blah. And they've crossed out his name. He cannot, this is a visa paper that they're giving us, and he crossed out the visa. And what Nehemia didn't know is that where I was sitting, there were guards. I was sitting across from the guard area where you hand them their passport control kind of thing. Nehemia was back down that never-ending hall in a room, and there were people, there were two men, one standing in the door talking to Nehemia, one standing behind him. And what Nehemia doesn't know is there were two other men down the hall in Nehemia that were going back and forth talking to these people. They would come out, they would talk to the guards in front, they would go around this way. I had no idea what was happening other than the fact that no one was happy that Nehemia was here. They didn't want to let him out of the country. And quite frankly, I wasn't sure they were going to let him out of the country either. It was just, you guys, it was sus. It was really just suspicious. There was just so much weirdness going on. There were two men in front of us that had come in. They were gone. There was another guy that came in after that, single. He was gone. But Nehemia, they kept. And so,
finally, that I'm trying to convince them. Look, I'm just trying to go to the hotel. I'm going to stay in the hotel for 3 days. I'm not going to leave the hotel, and then I'm going to go to the airport and leave. That's just all I want to do. And so the government minder finally says, "Okay, you pay me some money to be your guide, and if you agree to just stay in the hotel, we'll write that on the paper, and you don't go anywhere. You can't leave Aqaba. You can't leave the hotel." And then you go from the hotel in Aqaba to the airport on Monday, from the airport in Aqaba to the hotel in Amman, and give them this paper, and you leave on Monday. And then fine, just pay me the money and we'll let you do it. This is after like maybe an hour or more.
I'm going to give a backstory. So there's a backstory happening here too. So there's some friends of, I think they're friends of mine in the Ambassador Club, to tell you the truth. I've known them now for a while. I'm not sure exactly. Their names are Stephanie and Garvin, and they are wonderful. They were in Israel. They were trying to get out. And I texted them and I said, anything you need, talk to me. I'm glad to help. They would text back and forth for advice. And we just, we became acquainted. Well, what Nehemia didn't know is that when I was waiting for him with the car, he went to get the car. He left me there. I got a text from Stephanie. And Stephanie said, Stephanie had crossed over into Jordan. She and Garvin had crossed over earlier. The day before or so, and they were going to go down to the Dead Sea and spend, 3 days relaxing. She said this is on her bucket list, this wonderful place that they were going to stay, and she was really excited about it. You can tell Stephanie's a great planner, and she texted me and she said, God woke me up at 3 a.m. this morning and told me that your lives were in danger, and I'm picking you up from the Jordan border. When you cross over, we will be there with a car. We will pick you up. And I didn't tell Nehemia that. Things were so crazy busy. And I planned to mention it to him. We were moving all our luggage, when we were getting on the other side. But I hadn't told him that, so he didn't know that.
So we get this piece of paper that says I'm allowed to go from the border to the hotel, stay in the hotel for 3 days, go from the hotel, like it's very specific, from the hotel to the airport in Aqaba, then Aqaba to a hotel in Amman, and then fly out to Doha, Qatar, which is where our flight was supposed to be. Then from Qatar, by the way, Doha, Qatar is where Hamas has their international headquarters. And from Doha, Qatar to Dallas, where we live. And we're now walking out from the Jordanian border crossing, and this minder is walking with us. And he goes over and he talks to these taxis to tell them to take us to the airport. And one of the taxi drivers says, "Why did you need a guide?" And he's like confused. The guide's not coming with you. Most people just walk across. They don't need a guide. And what did the guide do? And what he's really thinking, I think what he's asking is, I want to know, are you Israeli? Because if you're Israeli, maybe he's thinking, I know a guy I can call up and make $10,000 and hand you over to him. Right. For all I know, that's what he's thinking. And there's a bunch of people at the border crossing.
And they've made phone call after phone call.
Yeah.
After phone call.
They've all heard this story. Maybe one of them is going to sell me out to Hamas and have me kidnapped. Right. Because they just kidnapped over 200 Israelis. Maybe they get another one without even have to fight the Israeli army. I mean, if the Israeli army had a hard time keeping the 200 people from being kidnapped, Jordanians could care less. So we're starting to get really nervous.
Well, there's like 8 guys there. There's like 8 men standing there. There are 3 taxis, and they're obviously handing us over into this. And Nehemia's going to have to go in one car, and I'm going to have to go in the other.
We got a lot of stuff.
And I
small
said,
cars.
Nehemia's like, "Let's just go. We're not going to wait for anybody." I said, "Absolutely not. I promised our friends Nehemia that we would wait for them, and we need to wait for them." And Nehemia's like, "Well, no, we can just go." And he's looking at me, and I said, "No, we're staying here until they get here." I said, "They're 16 minutes away." And the guy that was standing next to Nehemia said, "They're an hour away?" I said, No, they're 16 minutes away. They'll be right here. And the guy said, "So you have friends here?" And I said, yes, we have friends that are here. I said, they were on an earlier tour. He said, you're with a group? And I said, yeah, we're a big group, but we're just the stragglers of it. That's how I handled it.
So we end up getting picked up by Stephanie and her husband. Lynell goes with them. I go with the.
In retrospect, we should have done it around, but you wouldn't have let that happen.
I went with the Jordanian taxi driver. We get to the hotel, and at this point, we're thinking like, okay, this is not how we expected the border crossing to go. We're gonna lock the door in the hotel and hope nobody kidnaps me over the next 3 days. Right. That's what I'm thinking, and then get out as soon as I can on Monday.
Said the thing to me. We had not communicated. We had not said anything. We're both thinking the same thing, though. I can tell you that. And not only that, but my mother, when she was praying for us, she didn't tell me this until yesterday. I told Nehemia last night or this morning. When my mother was praying for us, she said, I was praying because in my head, I saw this hotel room where you were, and you were on the water. And people were coming in to kidnap you. And that's what I saw, Lynell. But I was like, and she didn't know anything. She didn't know anything about what had happened. I hadn't told her my story. I don't think she's heard my story coming out yet. But as a matter of fact, I'm sure she hasn't. But between what God spoke to Stephanie's heart and what God was speaking to my heart during that time, I can tell you when we got to the hotel, all I was thinking was, I'm checking in so that when they call to see if we're there and we're checked in, it's going to show us checked in for 3 days, and I'm going to go find a flight out. And I said to Nehemia, we're leaving. Normally he gives me, normally Nehemia is a very...
I'm like, how much is it going to cost? That's normally my response.
Yes. But he's a very reasonable person, and he'll say, okay, so why do we want to do this? What are you thinking? In this case, he didn't. It was the same way that he did when I said we're gonna wait for Stephanie and Garvin to get here. He turned to the man that was next to him, when the guide was just this man that was trying to put us in 2 different taxis, and he said, I do what my wife says. That's what he said, which is...
So she's calling up the airline, and I had tried to get us a flight out on Friday. I couldn't find one, but Lynell is amazing. She can get anything done.
Found it online. I found 6 flights online for us to get out. Stephanie and Garvin, myself and Nehemia, and I was making reservations for all of us because I believe, and Stephanie will have to speak to this, when God spoke to her heart, he didn't just say, I think he said, you're all in danger. And here's the thing I think about when I think about that type of thing. I won't say that out loud, actually. Never mind. So I found 4 seats. I went to book it, and it wouldn't book. So I called them. And when I called them, they said, there were only 2 seats left.
So bear in mind, it's like 11 a.m. and she's talking about a flight that's at
1 o'clock. Yeah. They said that when I bought the ticket, here's the thing too, and I didn't know this till Stephanie told me. I wouldn't have known if I hadn't been in the car with her. She said that you cannot go to the airport without a ticket.
Yeah, you can't just show up at the airport.
You have to have a ticket.
It's high security because a lot of terrorism, frankly, in Jordan. They're concerned about that. So for security reasons, they don't even let you in the airport unless you have a ticket.
And the other thing that Stephanie had told me is that when they drove down to the Dead Sea on Thursday morning, they went Thursday morning to the Dead Sea and checked into their hotel. And on the way down, they saw these fields full of tanks.
Jordanian tanks.
And on the way back that next morning, like at 5 a.m., all the tanks were gone. And when she told me that, I was like, good heavens. This is like, it went from bad to worse at that point. I was like, this is a really bad situation. We need to leave. There are only 2 seats out. And so we had to leave. We had to be there in 5 minutes. We had to be at the airport. And so we left and went to the airport, and Stephanie and Garvin left, and they went into a different country. They'll be home tomorrow, as a matter of fact. So
we go to the airport, and the security there says, well, what are you doing here? You're supposed to be at the hotel in Aqaba. That's what it says in this piece of paper. You're not supposed to be at the airport in Aqaba. So they have to call their superiors, and I show them my American passport. And I said, look, I'm just trying to leave.
And they all look at us like we are criminals. I'm telling you, everyone looks at us like we are bad people. Like there are no smiles. They are very suspicious of us, and I don't understand that. I mean, I still don't.
I'm an Israeli and a Jew, so to them, I am an evil person, right? That's how they look at it. So,
for everybody that,
I mean, no, on me at least. So anyway, long story short, we end up getting out of Aqaba. We went through some more security at the airport. They get permission to let us go.
We were stopped every single place we went for hours, guys.
Yeah. So but eventually we do fly out of Aqaba. And then from Aqaba, we fly to Amman, which is the capital of Jordan, the same day when there's these massive pro-Hamas protests going on, riots going on to celebrate Hamas's burning of babies and raping of women and kidnapping of Jews and murder of whole families. They're celebrating that. And we're in Amman. And in Amman, they pull us out of the passport control line and they say, what are you doing in Amman? You're not supposed to be in Amman. You're supposed to be in Aqaba. You're not even allowed to be in this city. And after some more phone calls and going to, dealing with different agents and paying a fine, we are finally allowed to leave. And we get on the airplane and I'm thinking, okay, finally, we're about to take off. We'll get to Doha. I'm just not going to tell Lynell that's the headquarters of Hamas. She doesn't need to know until we go.
I looked it up. I knew there was no party there. I didn't tell him.
Okay. I've known that for years.
Of course you did.
So, and then they say the flight's delayed indefinitely. And I'm like, so we're not getting out of Amman. And it ended up only being delayed by 20 minutes. We take off and I'm praying the whole time. We finally are taking off out of Amman and land in Doha. And I'm like, I need to get out of Doha as quickly as possible. We can never leave the airport from this place. There's literally a Hamas headquarters here. In Doha, it wasn't as bad because in Doha, we had a connecting flight where they didn't ask for your...
We didn't have to go through security.
We didn't have to go through... We had to go through security a couple times. Not passport control, right. So they didn't ask to see my Israeli passport. They just said, okay, are you allowed to go to the U.S.? Where's your visa to the U.S.? Oh, here's my U.S. passport. Okay, fine, go. No problem. So we get on the flight out of Doha to Dallas, and it was a sigh of relief. It was a great sigh of relief when we landed in Dallas, frankly.
When we got over Canada, I cried when we got over Canada. Because I knew if we had to turn around anywhere and go anywhere, if there was even a problem with the plane, we would end up in a country where I could get home.
Yeah, she says to me, if the plane crashes here, it's a place I can get home.
I wasn't afraid for myself, to tell you the truth. I was afraid for Nehemia the whole time. Nehemia had said to me at the border, you just go ahead and I'll meet you. And I was like, I'm not going anywhere without you. You don't go, I don't go.